Hello everyone, I'm Nizzahon here for the Aether Hub, bringing you another top 10 list. This time around though, I'm not looking at the history of Magic. Instead, I'm looking at what is sort of my other area of interest in Magic, Limited. I'm looking at the top 10 limited bombs in Hour of Devastation. The pre-release is almost upon us, so I wanted to do a list showing you guys basically the 10 cards that would be the coolest to get in your sealed deck at their pre-release, or the cards you would want to first pick over basically all other cards in the format if you open them in a booster draft. So let's go ahead and jump into the list. At number 10, I have Nicol Bolas, God Pharaoh. In terms of raw power, he of course would be even higher on this list, but the fact that he's 3 colors keeps me from being able to put him even higher. If you get him in your pre-release pool, you may not even be able to play him because he's so hard to cast. That said, if you can cast him, he's pretty much going to win you games. He casts free spells from your opponent's library, makes your opponent exile a card from their hand, does 7 damage to creatures or players, and his ultimate is of course amazing, basically says you win the game, and he starts with 7 loyalty. So if you have any board presence at all, he's easy to keep alive. Even if you don't have a lot of board presence, he can help you get there with his +2 or his -4, which lets you kill some of your opponent's creatures. He's incredibly powerful. I do think this format's going to be a little slower, and obviously pre-releases are sealed, so slower is the case there usually anyway. And Nicol Bolas is incredibly powerful. If you have any way to splash him, you should. At number 9, I have Grind to Dust. I think this is a card on this list that will maybe surprise the most people based on comments I got on my set review over on my channel. It's a really, really good card. So the Grind half is a sorcery that puts a -1/-1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures, and the Aftermath half says exile any number of target creatures that have -1/-1 counters on them. This is effectively a 6 mana card that says exile 2 target creatures. If that's what this said, people would love it. You do have to be playing both colors for it to really be at its best. You can't just be playing black. You have to have the dust half, but 6 mana to exile 2 creatures is pretty incredible. Targeted removal like that can just get rid of any creature, gods or not, is very good. And if your opponent has more -1/-1 counters around, either because you put them there or they put them there, dust can take even more things away from them. It does cost 6 mana. You can sort of do an installment plan where you use grind one turn and dust the next turn. But grinding and dusting on the same turn is usually what you want to be doing. The reason this is also only at number 9 is because it asks you to play 2 colors, more or less. At number 8, we have Pride Sovereign. This is the new sort of cat payoff at rare in Hour of Devastation, and it is really, really good. That said, it's not really going to be a bomb in a deck that's not also playing white. The bottom 3 cards on this list all sort of ask you to play more than 1 color, even though Pride Sovereign doesn't technically. It's not going to be very bomby or even very good if you can't pay the white mana for its exert cost. It's very mediocre if you can't, because there's just not going to be a ton of cats in your deck. There'll be a few, maybe it'll be a 4/4 or something, but what you really want to be doing is exerting and making cat tokens with lifelink, who also make him even bigger and so forth. So he's a huge bomb. He can just snowball the game for you. Eventually, you're just going to win. If you are allowed to exert over and over again, and Pride Sovereign will just win you a game if you happen to be in green-white. Right, now let's move into monocolored cards. At number 7, I have Hour of Devastation. This is a pretty cool card. All creatures lose indestructible is nice, and it does 5 damage to each creature and each non-Bolas planeswalker. So it can even deal with your opponent's problematic walkers. It's going to wipe most of the board. It is sort of a flavor fail that it can't kill Bantu or Oketra, but what are you going to do? It should be killing them since Bolas dealt with all of them. Anyway, but yeah, it's a good board sweeper. It's at the right mana cost. It's going to be better in a control deck, but I like board sweepers in really any limited deck. You just have to play to the fact that you have one in your hand, for example, sort of sandbag and let your opponent empty their hand and then just wipe their board on turn 5. It is a little less good if you top deck it and you're the one with more of a board, but in that case, you're probably going to win anyway, so you can't complain too much. At number 6, I have the only card from the last cycle of the gods in this set on this list. The rest are, some of them are good-ish, and some of them are just bad. The red one and the white one, I think, are bad. The black one and the green one are good, but I think Kefnet's Last Word is the best of all of them. It gives you a mind control effect for 4 mana, which is pretty incredible. It does tap down your lands for a turn, as they all do. But this is such huge upside that you're willing to do it every time. Basically, it's worth the downside, because effectively, the way I like to think about spells like this one that allow you to steal your opponent's stuff is I like to think of them as a removal spell that sort of says, destroy target creature and put a copy of it into play on your side of the battlefield. And that's essentially what it is. You go up 2 total creatures on your opponent because you take 1 from them. And this isn't an aura either, so aura removal won't work on it. They can, of course, bounce their own creature and get it back to their hand, but still, it's better than it being in an aura form in general. So yeah, this is really good. I would first pick it all the time, and it'd be really nice if you have it in your pre-release pool. Number 5, we have Mirage Mirror. This is one you really want in your pre-release pool because you can play it in any deck. Doesn't matter what color it is. And it's a pretty strong card. It is a hard one to judge just how much of a bomb it's going to be in the format without actually playing with it, because it does ask you to spend mana every turn. That said, you can make it into the best creature, artifact, or enchantment on the battlefield every single turn. And that is pretty nice. If you have one big creature in play already, making a copy of that is nice. Your opponent's attacking into this is just going to be a nightmare because they can't really attack with anything other than their largest creature, because you'll just copy their largest creature and block what they're attacking with. And if they attack with their largest creature, the worst you can do is trade with it with Mirage Mirror, and that's probably going to be worth the 2 mana activation cost. It just has so much flexibility, it does so much work. I love Mirage Mirror. I would first pick it a lot, and because of the fact that it's colorless, first of all, and second of all, it's just a very powerful card. And if you get this in your pre-release pool, be very, very happy. At number 4, I have Majestic Mirage Ark. I don't normally love these like star creatures that have power and toughness equal to the number of creatures you control, but this one says twice the number of creatures you control. So even if you only have one other creature in play when you cast it, it's a 4/4. And then it comes with a whole bunch of other text that allows it to steal, borrow, share, keyword abilities with other creatures you have in play during combat. It'll gain flying and all the other keyword abilities if you have another creature that has it. And there's keyword abilities all over the place, at common, at uncommon, so it's not going to be hard to get cards that give Majestic Mirror Ark more power. But if you have 3 creatures in play, or 2 when you play it, it's a 6/6, and it just scales incredibly quickly. Double is just so much better than power and toughness equal to the number of creatures you control. And I like the Mirror Ark a lot. You do have to have a creature-heavy deck. I mean, most decks are going to have 15-ish creatures, and the Mirror Ark is going to be very happy with that, especially if they have keyword abilities. At number 3, I have Nash, Cryo, Sphinx, Sovereign. This is a 6 mana 4/4 flying. Not the best stats ever, but what it does when it comes into play is kind of insane. It has sort of a mini Factor of Fiction effect. It gives you 4 cards instead of the 5 Factor of Fiction gives you. Your opponent then separates them into 2 piles, and you put one in your hand and the other into your graveyard. So you're going to get at least 1 card. I mean, if you put 1 card in a pile and 3 in the other, you're going to get at least 1. You're usually going to get 2 because your opponent doesn't really want to give you a choice where you get to get 3 cards usually, unless they're like 3 lands. I guess maybe they might do that. So it's just a big flyer in the air. It gives you a lot of card advantage. And if you happen to have other Sphinxes, it gets even crazier. Or if you have ways to flicker your Unesh, it gets even crazier. Because if you get to use that ability more than once, it's going to be pretty hard for you to lose the game. At number 2, I sort of copped out and put all 3 of the new gods. Even though they're gold, which, kept some cards on this list down near the bottom, these 3 cards are all so powerful, and only 2 colors, unlike Nicol Bolas, that I had to include them, I think, at number 2. They're all insane. They're all first pickable. You're going to try to splash them as hard as you can if you get them in your pre-release pool or if you draft one, because they're all bombs. I mean, they're all... The Scorpion God and the Scarab God have amazing stats for their cost. The Locust God a little less so, but the Locust God's static ability is insane. Just getting a insect token every turn with haste, at least 1, is insane. The other 2 have great activated abilities, and their static abilities kind of interact a lot with their static abilities. Like the Scarab God has, I think, the best activated ability. 4 mana to exile a creature from any graveyard, note it can be your opponent's, and making a 4/4 black zombie token copy of it is insane. You can basically stop casting spells at that point, because chances are most things aren't going to be as good as just making a copy out of a card from your opponent's graveyard. This also makes it so if they find a way to deal with your board, you have a handful of spells. The Scorpion God can kill things, and it draws you cards every time you kill a creature with a -1/-1 counter on it, or if it dies in general. They're all insane. I mean, there's not much more to say about them. All 3 can take over the game. They all sort of snowball the longer they're in play, and they'll pull you ahead from behind even. So I think, despite the fact that they're gold, I would first pick these all day, even higher than Nicol Bolas since he's 3 colors. And at number 1, I do have a monocolored card, and it is Angel of Condemnation. This thing's nuts. It is only a 3/3, so it dies to a lot of removal in the format. But it's the kind of card that just says, if you can't deal with this, you lose the game. There's not really any way not to. It's already a 4-mana 3/3 with Flying and Vigilance, which would be like an uncommon level playable. But it has 2 other activated abilities, both of which are kind of insane. The first one lets you exile any creature, and you return that creature to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. It's a flicker effect, but it doesn't only work on your creatures. You can use it on your creatures to abuse into the battlefield triggers, like Unesh, for example. That would be a pretty messed up board. But you can also use it on your opponent's creatures. You can use it to get rid of their best attacker. You can use it to get rid of their best blocker. And that is pretty useful, even if you're not using Angel of Condemnation's other ability, which is that he can exert himself. I guess all the angels are guys here, right? He can exert himself and exile a creature, so Oblivion Ring things, until it leaves the battlefield. And the crazy thing is, you can attack with this because it has Vigilance, and then use either of these abilities whenever you want to. The threat of activation is always going to be there. Your opponent is just going to have a big headache if they're having to deal with this thing. In addition to the fact that it can just kill them in the air slowly. Not that slowly, though. 3 power is enough. So those are what I think are the 10 best bombs in Hour of Devastation. I hope you get one of them or more in your pre-release, and I hope you get to pick them frequently enough in draft. This looks like a fun set. It's one of the last small sets we'll be experiencing, so enjoy it while you can. So thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click the like button. If you want to make sure you catch more of my limited content, you can find it here on the Aether Hub. You can also find it over on my channel, NizzahonMagic. I actually did a full set review on my channel if you want to know my thoughts about more than just these 10 cards. And you can also find here on the Aether Hub content from a lot of other great content creators. So thanks for watching.